like things where I suddenly have to take a step back and like reassess the way I'm answering the question, because there's cultural differences. You can't deny cultural differences.
Possibly like a monoculture in most areas, because they're like...
And we've got like the narrative of the government, and then we also have like the arrogance of that. I mean, Trump is arrogant. He brings that to the table. But that's in addition to the fact that all of us are arrogant.
Yeah.
I'm standing up in front of people because I've been invited to do so, but none of that takes into account that I believe that I'm arrogant enough to stand up and voice my opinion, that anybody would be interested in that.
Yeah.
And so there is ego that goes into these things as well. So we also have to navigate that, plus culture, plus, you know, appropriate interactions. And so there's just a lot of stuff we have to. It's good. It's been an exhausting week, but in the best way possible. It's been a lot of work, a lot of different things, a lot of different bits of energy, you know, put out into the ether, it's been good though. I don't know that I've ever been to a campus that has been this kind and this open and welcoming, and so that's made it even better. It becomes easier to give of yourself, I think, in any capacity, when the recipients aren't just kind about it, but are generous in their response, and that's what I've gotten here. So I'm grateful for that. I've been on a lot of campuses across the country, and none has really felt quite like this. So it's been excellent.
Indigenous peoples making comments about derogatory notions of what it means to be authentic, and calling into question these ideas and stereotypes about indigeneity that are really violent and not based in the ways that indigenous peoples define ourselves.
Residence has been great. Everybody's been like incredibly nice and welcoming and friendly. Sometimes with these things, you know, there's like awkward students, and it's not been that at all. People like introducing themselves and just being very very kind and open. It's been really, really nice. Really awesome. I've been able to spend a lot of time in my performance work in the space, and that has been something I've wanted to do for a while, and I've been able to do here. That's been incredible because it's allowed me to experiment with presence and what that presence looks like and what it feels like. So that's something I'm definitely be taking away, because I think it was. From my perspective, it was a smashing success. When I was at the Tacoma Art Museum, I was able to really do that in a controlled way. When I did the work here on the UWB campus, I was able to do the same thing in a slightly different way. It's loose enough that I'm able to successfully do it, but it's also tight enough that it can still be a comprehensive piece.
I'll say his honesty. I remember when we spoke with him, we all crowded around him and listened to him. I think the most striking thing about him is very honest and just, I don't know, just so to a point where it was like an actual conversation that I really appreciate with a guest speaker.
I like that his work is accessible, so it's something I know I can take pictures of his art and share with my friends. I took a poster of one of his and was able to put it in my room, and people come see it. I think the way he presents his art is a great way to share with friends and help understand issues that may be really complex. but the way he presents it with his art is pretty good to share.
That's something I've been able to do here that I'm definitely going to take away. And just a reminder to always be, as open and humble and gracious as I possibly can. I'm not a terribly humble person, so I just need to try to keep myself in check. You're never better than anybody else. You're never even really smarter than anybody else, but you can be nicer than everybody else. And so those things have been coming from the students, and also just the way that I've been received here has just been a stark reminder of that as well.
The thing I'll take away most from my time here with Gregg is after seeing all his art, I feel more inspired to understand my own culture and my own ancestry and identity, because there's so much that we can find out about ourselves, and I think that's what spoke to me the most from his work, is that I owe it to myself to explore my own cultural identity so that I can raise awareness on issues similar.
Gregg's message definitely has to do with the fact that even though Native Americans have been so just constantly wronged for so long, they still exist. The culture is still alive, and no matter what happens, there's going to be Native American people in America, and that's important to realize.
When I saw him earlier, the artist, I thought it was just interesting how it didn't seem like a protest. It seemed more like an art form, and I thought that was really interesting, just how beautiful it was, just seeing all the paintings, how different they were in abstract. It just kind of represents the real world.
For somebody to be informed of their heritage, their ancestors, their existence, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. You can't be afraid to correct yourself. You can't be afraid to trip sometimes, but you always got to put one foot in front of the other. I believe that there are forces in the universe that create opportunities to connect with the right people in the right time in the right place, especially when our intention is good and when our intention is in that direction. But it requires us to always move forward. There's this statement that I've heard that by the Creator, we're saved by grace after all you can do. That we have to put forth the effort. We have to do everything that we can do, and that it is when we do everything we can do that the Creator makes up the difference, so that we can connect in the right place.
I actually don't know that much about it, but when I looked him up on the internet, and basically I was actually kind of hoping to see, I guess, some of his performance stuff, and I'm expecting to see things that move in one way or another, whether it angers me or makes me jump up and down or whatever.
So it means doing things in the good way, and doing that in a way that's appropriate, not just for yourself, but for those who are around you. For natives in particular, there's a few narratives in place right now that allow for connection. There's narratives of political and social action. There's narratives of history. These things allow us to connect in ways that are beyond our tribal connection. And so there are those that don't have the opportunity to have that tribal connection. And if you don't have that tribal connection, you can connect in other ways that are as meaningful as you try to make your way to that tribal connection, to your source.
I think Gregg was attempting to demonstrate the multiple dimensionalities of Native Americans in this country, and to communicate to us that our representation of Native Americans and Native American history is probably false and should be reconsidered.
But maybe if I'm informed, I'm still having to navigate the landscape of, you know, so-called America. And in having to navigate that landscape, I'm having to not look at my language or traditions or stories or origins or any of those things, but instead the way our image is used, the way our image is wielded, the standing that we have in social and political arenas, the history of those things. I mean, those things are really in my work, and those are the things that I talk about because those things make sense to me, but I also think make sense to a lot of Native people. You know, 75, 80% of Native people don't even live on a reservation. They live in places like Seattle. And so while it's important to recognize all Native people wherever they are, the majority of our people are not in their homelands, which means that they're having to navigate very seriously and in very real ways stereotype and erasure and the lack of inclusion and the lack of historical context. All those things are in everybody's face. Those are things that we can connect on and we can work together as a people, in addition to our language revitalization and our traditions and culture and self-determination. I know what I can do, you know, raise children, raise a family that is being conscious of these things and trying to better their circumstance and better the circumstances of those around them. I think it's going to take something pretty serious. I don't know what that looks like, and I know that I don't know what it looks like, but I know that we should all be prepared for it when it happens. Allies and natives alike, that we need to know our history, we need to know the circumstance, we need to have respect for each other and reverence for the different spaces that we occupy and the way we occupy them, that would allow us an opportunity when things change, when a movement happens to the degree that will enact the change that we're talking about. That we will be ready to spring up and take our place in supporting those things and making sure that it goes full force where it needs to go to enact and create change.